Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. I'm your host, as always, Cody Felger. Joining us on the show, he is the Falcons reporter for the Falcoholic and also a host and producer for Falcoholic Live, which covers Atlanta Falcons. Kevin, thank you so much, man, for coming on. Really appreciate it. How are you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Thanks for having me, Cody. It's always exciting getting set up on the road. I know a lot of people are traveling, so I got my mobile battle station here going. But yeah, other than that, minor technical kerfuffles to start us off today. But other than that, we're all good.
Yeah, man, I totally understand. Before I kind of moved into my own place, I feel like I always had something with the internet or something. It never fails, especially when you're traveling. So, but I do appreciate you making that time, man. So talk to me, Kevin, about the Falcons, because a lot of hype coming into the season. Atlanta right now currently sits at 6-8 record. Looks like there's going to potentially be a quarterback change this week. So a lot going on in the news cycle for the Atlanta Falcons. How have you felt about this year, covering this team with all the lofty expectations from certain people? I don't know how you felt about them, but how have you felt about the Falcons and just a lot of things happening right now for this organization?
Disappointed. I think most Falcons fans would tell you that it's been a disappointing season, and we haven't seen what we wanted to see from anyone but the defense. The defense has actually outperformed all expectations, but unfortunately, it doesn't matter because the offense can't score. And um, it's a big problem when you've got an offensive coaching staff and you've invested 3 top 10 picks into building out the weapons, and that you don't have the quarterback. And that was the criticism initially, where oh, Kyle Pitts is such a generational player, we can't pass on him. And I didn't disagree with that, but they have failed for 3 years to find a quarterback. And now you can see what's happening is we've got a quarterback that can't do it or isn't ready to do it, and a coach that is not willing to adjust his scheme to accommodate a struggling quarterback, or really to adjust what people have done to stop what he did last year. And it just feels like a directionless offense that every single week has a chance to win because of the defense. And it seems like they've run out of juice, essentially. And the defense held the Panthers to 9 points last week, and the offense managed 7 against the 31st ranked scoring defense in the Carolina Panthers. So it's been a big disappointment. I think that's the nicest way to say it.
Sure, man. And we totally, as people who covered the Colts the last few years, we get it, with the kind of uncertainty at quarterback, the just a lot of stuff there. That ultimately is the most important position in football. I think you can argue for good reason, right? It doesn't matter how many weapons you have. It doesn't matter all these other things, how good your defense is. Right. If your quarterback's not up to par, you're probably not going to be, competing. And so that's definitely, definitely going to be interesting to see how the Falcons handle that coming into the offseason. But it looks like this week it will be Taylor Heineke who will be starting, who obviously has been around the league a little bit with Washington and a few other places. So, but it's kind of interesting, Kevin, because you talk about the Falcons came in with big expectations, have kind of disappointed this year. The Indianapolis Colts, I feel like, have been the complete opposite, where not a whole lot of people really had expectations for this team coming in. There was people in the national media calling 3-4 wins potentially. The Colts have already doubled that. And, they do so without, their rookie first round pick, Anthony Richardson, for the majority of the season. So how have you feel about the Indianapolis Colts? What's been your impression of them this year? Right now sitting at 8-6, a 3-way tie right now for the AFC South. What have been your thoughts overall on the Indianapolis Colts in 2023?
I think the Indianapolis Colts are what Falcons fans hoped Atlanta would be this year. A team that was still dealing with some defensive problems, clearly, but it was moving in the right direction. But you were getting a ton from your run game, and you were sort of hoping that, along with a talented group of skill position players, could prop up a quarterback that was a little bit of a question mark. Obviously, with the Colts, with Anthony Richardson, a massive investment made there. But still a rookie quarterback, and a rookie quarterback that had some passing game questions, being only couple years as a starter there at Florida. but the Colts are overcoming their shortcomings, and they're doing it with Gardner Minshew now because the offensive coaching and the scheme is elevating the offense. And I've been really impressed with what Steichen's been able to do in Indianapolis. I think the defense, while they've not been terrific, they have created a lot of turnovers that typically is pretty random, but they've managed to do it, which so they get, I mean, obviously you give them their props. And um, they've just dominated on the ground, and they've done enough in the passing game. They haven't had to ask Minshew to do too much. And I think that it's not sad. I mean, I'm happy for Colts fans, obviously, but I think Falcons fans are probably thinking that this would be the Falcons, where they're 8-6, and that would be dominating the NFC South at this point at 8-6, and instead, the Colts are having that sort of thing, and now the Falcons are in the same boat as the Colts maybe a year or two ago, where whatever you thought you were building didn't work, so now we got to start over.
Yeah, man. And you mentioned just the offense right now. Obviously a terrible game against the Carolina Panthers a week ago. But what would you say, if anything? Because I feel like there is still a lot of talent on this Atlanta offense, and a lot of top 10 investment type of guys the Falcons have had the last couple of years. So you look at this, Indianapolis Colts defense, which you mentioned, not the greatest unit, gives up a decent amount of yards. They've struggled to stop the run at times, but they're really good in two categories. You mentioned taking the ball away. One of the top teams in terms of forced fumbles. I think they're tied for number 3 right now in interceptions, and also they are top 3 team in getting after the quarterback. So for all their flaws, they have some things they do well. What do you think ultimately will kind of make the difference in this game for the Falcons or the Colts to see who ultimately comes out on top, and do the Falcons start to get some life with a new quarterback, or do the Colts kind of start shutting some things down and do what they did against, say, Mitchell Trubisky a week ago in the Pittsburgh Steelers, where they shut them out in the second half? What do you think needs to happen? I mean, what do you think will be some of the biggest X factors here for the Atlanta offense against this Colts defense?
Yeah, I mean, it's the story of the season for Atlanta is, can they run the football? Because when they run the football well, everything seems to work. And that was what they could hang their hat on last year. Even when they had nothing else, they were a top 5 rushing attack. They were getting it done against, they faced the most stack boxes in the league, and they could get it done. This year, even after adding Bijan Robinson, the run game has fallen off a cliff. They're 26th in rushing success rate this year. They're very average in terms of their other rushing stats. And a lot of it is that the scheme is just stagnated. So can they run the ball? If they can, then the offense probably looks pretty good. That's typically been how it's worked, and they've had some truly dominant games. They put up over 200 rushing yards a couple weeks ago. They've done it a couple times this year, but it's so inconsistent. And one of the biggest issues has been that the team seems to be reluctant to give Bijan Robinson the reins. They've done it here and there, but last week was his lowest snap percentage, I think, since week 4 or something like that. And they just seem reluctant to commit to making him their bell cow, which is an absurd thing to say when you drafted a running back in the top 10. And they've gotten really predictable with how they run the football. When they have Bijan in, it's going to be outside zone, and when they have Tyler Algier in, it's probably going to be inside. And you can tell defenses know what's coming. It's not a secret. Add to that the tight end blocking has really fallen off, and it just has been really sloppy. So really running the football is the key. Can the Colts stop it? And can the Falcons execute it? And if they can, then they'll have a good chance in this game. And if they can't, then it's probably going to look a lot like that Panthers game.
Sure. It's going to be really interesting to me, man, because, the Colts have struggled to stop the run this year for the good chunk of it, obviously missing one of their best run stoppers in Grover Stewart for 6 games. I mean, you saw just the dramatic decline of the run defense, but he's been back the last couple weeks, and it seems like this run defense has started to find its own a little bit, maybe gain some confidence there. So I'm really intrigued. It's like, even though the numbers aren't pretty for either team, the potential is there for either the Atlanta to have a really good game running the football, or I feel like for Indianapolis to kind of shut that down a little bit, if they are very predictable. So I am very intrigued to see kind of how that works. You mentioned, the quarterback, Desmond Ridder, obviously not playing in this game. Indianapolis comes in. They've had a few issues, in terms of pass coverage. They have two rookie corners right now playing, and Julius Brents and Jalen Jones out there. A couple. They have a very young secondary, all things considered. I think their oldest player in that secondary is probably Kenny Moore, and he's late 20s. So there's a lot of youth right now with the Colts, and we've seen some good, we've seen some bad with it, but Atlanta does have some weapons. And so how do you think this matchup's going to go with some players that are pretty young for Atlanta as well, but still obviously oozing with talent everywhere, at their wide receiver, Drake London, tight end, Kyle Pitts, and then so many guys, Bijan out of the backfield. How do you think Atlanta's going to try with Taylor Heineke to kind of get some of those guys some looks here early and often?
It's really a mystery to me what they're going to do each and every week. You would think the game plan would be just funnel as many targets to Drake London and Kyle Pitts as possible. A couple weeks ago against the Bucs, Drake London set a career high with 10 catches for 172 yards. He was dominating. Last week he had 3 targets. It's I'm going to keep beating this drum. It's like we're just like, what is happening here? But Taylor Heineke's going to sling it. He loves to sling it. That's his thing. And he's going to take shots, and he's going to try to put the ball downfield. And when you got guys like Drake London and Kyle Pitts, a lot of times that could work. It didn't work super well for him in the 2.5 games he started in the middle of the season, which again was a bizarre sort of turn of events. Ridder got concussed and then was cleared, but they kept Heineke in and then played him for 2 more games and then put Ridder back in after that. So we've been all over the place with this. The offense with Heineke didn't look significantly better, in my opinion. I do think he's a veteran. You can tell he's more comfortable with deciphering the defense and the pressures, but he doesn't have a lot of arm talent. That's always been Heineke's thing, is that he thinks he has arm talent, and he throws the ball like he has arm talent, but that ball doesn't have velocity on it for the most part. But he does, I think, typically read the field quickly. He's good at sort of escaping and scrambling and doing those types of things. And I think on intermediate passes, he's very accurate. But, when we've seen him try to attack deep, it's just very scattershot. And he, going up against this Colts secondary, like you mentioned, they are one of the league leaders in interceptions. It's a very dangerous combination. So I think they'll try to sling it. I think it's very likely that Arthur Smith finishes out the season, but something changed this week for sure. You could feel it after that Panthers loss, and they made a quarterback change, and the owner went on the radio and did an interview about Arthur Smith's future. So at this point, he needs to find a win immediately, or he might not make it all the way through the season. So they may just decide, like, we just need to go all out and see if we can do something to win this game, because they're going to have to score points to keep up with this Colts offense. We've seen the Colts are, I believe, 8th in scoring, and they're not going to slow down for this Falcons team. And while the Falcons defense is pretty good, they don't typically completely shut down anyone, and they're going to have to find a way to sling it. But I mean, if it was me, I'd just force feed the ball to Drake London as much as possible. And see what we can do with Kyle Pitts and all that. But what will they do? I couldn't tell you week to week what the game plan is.
Yeah. How is this offensive line for Atlanta, specifically at protecting the quarterback? How have they been this year? I know it's kind of been 2 different guys in and out, but how have they been overall protecting whoever's back there?
Early season was disastrous, which was bizarre because it was 4 of the 5 starters from last year that ended up being a top 5 unit. It's stabilized since then. The last couple of weeks, they've been dealing with a lot of injuries. I think at one point in the Bucs game, they had 4 backups in. Last week, they had 3 backups in. So, but the pass protection was fine, even with 3 backups in. It was the run blocking that completely fell apart. But they've been solid to above average in pass pro. They're typically pretty good. They have some veterans there. Drew Dahlman should be back this week. He was close to returning last week. Jake Matthews is just a stalwart at left tackle, very reliable. It does look like maybe Caleb McGarry might get back on the field, but his replacement Storm Norton has been fine as a pass protector. It's really been the run blocking that he hasn't been able to keep up with. And then Lindstrom, I think, was also close to returning. We'll see. Obviously, he's the best offensive lineman on the team. in both facets. But yeah, pass pro has been pretty solid. It's inexplicably the run blocking, which is where they excelled last year, that's been the biggest issue.
Gotcha. Okay, let's flip it over now to this Atlanta defense. You talked about it. A top 10 defense statistically. They've been really, really good, specifically at stopping the run. It feels like more because they have some players. I feel like but overall, it's still a top 10 defense. What have you noticed this year from this Atlanta defense? You mentioned it's kept them in a lot of these games. What's been some of their strengths, the things they've done well that they could potentially use against this Indianapolis offense that, yeah, they could put up a lot of yardage. They have that capability, but they also have had the capability to turn the ball over a lot this year. So what does Atlanta do well, and what will they need to do well in this game to potentially help stop this Indianapolis offense?
Yeah, I mean, just continuing to do what they do best, which is third downs. They're top 5 third down defense. They're top 5 red zone defense. They typically play their best ball in those key situations. They're very good against the run. They should be fully healthy again this week. And really the biggest change was, when they still had Grady Jarrett, which was up until about week 7, the interior defensive line was a massive strength, and it had been completely changed with Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata. That duo was a top 5 duo while they were playing together. Once Grady went out, I mean, it was a big loss. Obviously, he's kind of the heart and soul of this defense. Onyemata has continued to play really well, but it's not quite the same. So they've had to move Calais Campbell more inside, and he's continued to defy time and space and is still probably the team's best defensive lineman outside of David Onyemata. So the interior has been really good. They're good at shutting down the run. They have 2 really good run stuffing linebackers right now. In Caden Ellis, who came over from New Orleans, and Nate Landman, former undrafted free agent, who has kind of come out of nowhere, finally healthy. He had a debilitating injury in college that led to him going undrafted, but he's an elite run stuffing linebacker. Just has some athletic limitations in coverage, so that's kind of been the thing that has kept him in the third string before the injury to Troy Anderson, who was the Falcons starter before him. The Falcons are vulnerable in the passing game sometimes, because sometimes they look great, sometimes they don't. So if you can get Richie Grant, who was the second safety, he was actually benched mostly last week in favor of rookie 7th rounder DeMarco Helms, to tell you how things are going for Richie Grant. But he can't play man coverage against tight ends. He can't do it. His instincts are all wrong. He makes mistakes all the time. So that's been one area you could target the Falcons there. And then whoever's playing across from AJ Terrell has been vulnerable at times. Jeff Okudah is a great run defender and plays man coverage very well, but if he has to play zone, he doesn't play zone very well. And teams have been able to get him there. And then rookie Clark Phillips filled in for Okudah for a couple weeks, had 2 great games, and last week got eaten alive by Adam Thielen. You could tell the veteran was just cooking him with his, that's what Thielen does. He's going to cook rookies. So, we'll see. They benched Phillips and put Okudah back in last week, and then Okudah got cooked by Adam Thielen also. So it's like, who knows what they'll do there. But, they have Jesse Bates. They have AJ Terrell. Everyone else is going to do their job. The biggest issue with this Falcons defense is they just don't have edge pass rush, like, at all. They have good run defenders. Calais Campbell's still elite there. Lorenzo Carter's been excellent as a run defender. Occasionally they can get something from Arnold Ebiketie, but they don't rush the passer well off the edge. That's been their Achilles heel. And they're just vulnerable in zone coverage. They make some coverage mistakes sometimes there, but man coverage, they're great. And down to down, they play really well. It's just this defense gets worn down. They don't have the depth anymore without Grady Jarrett and Kentavious Street on the interior. They don't have the edge pass rush. So once those interior guys get tired, that's why you see the defense giving up scores at the end of games and losing the game, quote unquote. I don't know how you can blame the defense when you lose 7-9, but that's where we are. So
yeah, gotcha. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see in this game also, if the Colts do get back some of their, weapons offensively. Jonathan Taylor, he practiced today on Thursday. We'll see how he kind of looks with that thumb. Obviously, the Colts are able to run the ball without him or Zach Moss for the majority of last week against the Steelers. They were just able to pound it. I think there was one drive in particular where I think they ran 14 straight run plays. It was unbelievable. I haven't seen this offensive line dominate like that in the run game all year. So it's kind of interesting because it's like the Colts coming off a great game running the football. The Falcons, have the ability to stop the run pretty well. So I'm really intrigued with that. And then obviously Michael Pittman, who took that big hit in that Pittsburgh game against Kazi, however you pronounce it. The guy, he's out for the year now.
KZ, former Falcon.
Yeah. I thought he played for him.
Yes, he did. Yep.
Yeah, so you know him very well
Yes.
with the hits and the lowering the helmet, and somehow Pittman's practicing today, which is just incredible to me. When I saw that hit initially, man, I was like, I don't know if he's going to play the rest of the year. Like, it was that brutal.
It was brutal.
And Pittman's like, he's one of the toughest players on the team.
He's huge.
He's going out. Like, it's a big hit. So, definitely glad that seemingly he's good, and he didn't have a contact jersey. Didn't have a no contact jersey on Thursday. So that's potentially good news. And the Colts obviously have a couple other guys. Josh Downs, the rookie, he's been really good out of North Carolina. They have Alec Pierce, who definitely can burn people deep. We saw him do it against the Tennessee Titans. He drew a penalty last week against the Steelers. So seems like the Colts have at least one or two plays, like deep plays designed for him about every single week. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they work if they do have these two players back. That would definitely be huge for them. But because there are some really good players on both sides of the football. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this game ultimately plays out. And hopefully these guys play. But the one thing you mentioned, Kevin, about the getting after the quarterback, I think that could be a big advantage for Indianapolis because potentially Braden Smith, the right tackle, is not going to play in this game. He's missed a lot of time this year. Had a knee injury a couple weeks ago, so it's been the rookie Blake Freeland at right tackle. Seems like the majority of the season, and so I thought he had some rookie moments against T.J. Watt early on in that game, but really felt like he held his own. So I definitely think that will be good. You're not facing him or Alex Highsmith this week, and that will be good for him in just the pass pro. And the offensive line traditionally has been pretty darn good this year in protecting Gardner Minshew and, being able to allow him to navigate the pocket and make some plays down the field. So, I will be interested to see, though, because like Atlanta, you mentioned, they got A.J. Terrell. You guys have Jesse Bates. Like there definitely are some very talented players back there in that secondary for Atlanta. So I'm interested on that. But Kevin, I wanted to get your thoughts on a score prediction here because I always like to have people who come on kind of give their thoughts. I mean, you've been following the Falcons from, day one of the offseason. So, basically this team in and out. How do you feel about this game for the Falcons? You mentioned a lot riding potentially on this game for the future of Arthur Smith, for the future of, a lot of things potentially with the Falcons here this season. So they definitely need a response. I think they'll come out hungry, but how do you feel like this game is going to shake out here for this one?
Yeah, I mean, the Falcons typically have played better at home. Not lately, but they have in general. And they scored more points when Taylor Heineke was in, even if it didn't lead to any wins. So, they're probably going to score in the low 20s in this one. But I don't think this team wins another game this year, to be honest with you. I think that they've kind of lost their mojo and another quarterback change. Teams don't typically take kindly to that. It's just the second quarterback change, going back and forth. It's a lot of bad juju right now around this team, but the Falcons are incapable of playing anything other than an ugly, close game. That's what they do every week. Doesn't matter who the opponent is. So I think the Colts are probably going to win like 25-23 or something like that. It'll probably come down to the wire, and whoever, has the ball last has a chance to score. But I think it's going to be turnovers again. The Falcons turn the ball over a lot. And I think that'll end up being the killer again on Sunday. But probably going to hopefully be a better game than that Panthers game, which was rain soaked and just disgusting football. So at least I think it'll be more entertaining than that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'm going to go 24-20 Indianapolis. I do think it will be closer than maybe a lot of people are projecting or thinking it will be, because I do think there are some things, right, that the Falcons want to prove here. Arthur Smith wants to prove here. And, a lot of these games, like the Falcons have been in, right? You mentioned it. These games they've lost by single digits. They just haven't come out on top. And so I think they will keep it close here. I think this Atlanta team that definitely has a ton of talent. And I think they're going to come out and, Even though it's like the playoffs aren't technically out of the picture, so they could theoretically, do something, but I don't know. I mean, I think that every game for them is so critical. They can't afford to lose anymore, obviously, and so I think that it'll be close. But I think ultimately Indianapolis, they're making a push for the AFC South, and I think they learned their lesson a couple weeks ago in Cincinnati, where everybody's like, "Oh, it's a backup quarterback. You're going to be fine," and then they absolutely go out there and get their butts handed to them. And so I just don't think they're going to overlook any team. And so I feel like if this was a couple of years ago with Frank Reich, I might be a little bit more worried. But it seems like Shane Steichen, for the most part, has had this team ready to go. And so I think ultimately that's going to kind of be what it is. It's going to be a good game. But I think ultimately the deficiencies for Atlanta, like you mentioned, coaching, quarterback, lack of pass rush, I think those things are going to come back to beat them. And maybe some things that they do well will kind of be maybe not exposed a little bit, but because of some of the weaknesses, the Colts will be able to, for example, push the ball down the field with some of these guys if they are healthy. And maybe with Taylor gets back, run the football and pick up where they left off a week ago. But at the end of the day, I think it'll be a good game. But yeah, the fact that you mentioned the Falcons turn the ball over a ton and the Colts take the ball away a lot, that definitely, I think, goes in the Colts' favor as well. But yeah, man, it's going to be a good game. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah. I mean, we're sort of evaluating the next steps for this team, and I think they've assembled a good core. They just need someone else to direct the ship. They've built this beautiful battleship here, and unfortunately, they put like a car battery to run it in there. So we gotta get that changed out. But I think there's the potential for a quick turnaround, I think. And the defense being as good as they have this quickly, no one was really expecting that. Can't praise enough the job that Ryan Nielsen and those guys have done, completely flipping the script. I mean, this is the best defense they've had in at least 7 or 8 years, I would say. Just completely overnight change. So they're going to keep it close. The defense is going to play their ass off, and they're going to get let down by the offense once again. But at least it's been interesting enjoying watching the defense. It's been a long time since we've been able to do that. So at least we've had that this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kevin, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, find your work, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, guys, you can find me at Falcoholic Kevin on the Twitter X, Apocalypse, whatever's going on over there these days. But you can also find the show. It's the Falcoholic Live on YouTube, Dirty Birds and Brews on your podcast platforms. We have 4 shows a week during the season, including post-game show, which we'll have right after the game, Wednesday night live shows. Then we have recorded shows on Tuesday and on Friday. My game preview will be coming out on Friday as well. So if you need more coverage of this game, you can go check that out.
Awesome, guys. Be sure to go check out Kevin's work over there. They do great stuff over there at the Falcoholic. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on, man. It was a pleasure. Good to finally meet you, and excited for, I guess, Sunday. I want to say Saturday now because the Colts played a game on Saturday.
Right.
But yeah, it'll be a fun game on Sunday, and hope you have a Merry Christmas, man, and hope it's a great time. Are you, by the way, I was curious, are you traveling to see family or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm back in Florida now.
Nice.
Yeah, back in the warm temperatures here because I live in New York otherwise. So it's T-shirt weather here in the 60s. So,
dude, I know. I mean, I live in Indiana, and it's just cold and bitter, and I don't like it. So definitely jealous of you, man. But hope you have a great time, man. Hope you're able to enjoy some time with friends and family, and ultimately we'll see what happens on Sunday. But thanks so much, man. And thank you guys for tuning in. Really do appreciate it. Be sure to smash that like button, turn on the notification bell, all that good stuff. Thank you guys for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.